Hi guys, it's Jacob from Stringbuzz here, stringbuzzworld.org being the music journalism site, links are in the description down below. And we have a brand new entry into this Songs That Plagued My Childhood series. What a woeful series, and it's the part 3 to this series, if you couldn't already tell by the title, the thumbnail and everything else. So yeah, I'm going to refer to the original article as I usually do for these videos, so I hope you enjoy. So it's been around 2 months since I actually last uploaded an installment into this series. I think it was February when I last did, but the time has come for me to start whining once again about the music that had me annoyed, irritated, and or hurt its just mere existence. I haven't really whined very much about music this month because this month has been a really good month for music, much better than March was. So yeah, I think we're over halfway now and I need to get all my moaning out before April's done. We've already had some crowd pleasers basically turn up along the way in this series, so I definitely recommend you check out those parts as well. We had artist features such as Justin Bieber and Leona Lewis and even S Club 7, so yeah, a nice range there, peering their ugly musical pasts around the corner at my expense. So should we see a couple more picks on this list then? So to kick off this part, we have the Wanted's track Glad You Came. So who here still remembers The Wanted? Yeah, probably only us Brits. Seemingly no one remembers The Wanted, and although Nathan Sykes in particular has gotten off to a great start in his solo career over the last year or so, I can't say I miss The Wanted at all. They were part of this boy band renaissance that happened here in the UK around the sort of 2010 to 2013 period, and I loathed just about every second of it. And although there were often catchy numbers released by the likes of JLS, who I did enjoy actually when they were about, and even One Direction have their fair few just plain catchy tracks. It's sort of that X Factor type crew really. I always thought The Wanted were undeserved of their fame and just were in the right places at the right time, and they were pitching well above their weight. This song in particular I just found excruciating, since it had this approach which combined summer pop with club music and even Ibiza type anthem undertones. I don't even know the best way of describing that. Basically it was made in a way that it could be played at any gathering at all, because it was still PG as well. And regardless of the variety of occasion, it would probably be in the rotation on the playlist. Whether you were at the gym, this would play. Whether you were at a school disco, this would play. Whether you were in a shopping centre, a house party, or even in a taxi, this song would be playing at least once during that journey anyway, in the taxi. It's just so bland and lifeless, and it actually hurts to go back and listen to it. Although I mentioned how Nathan is probably the most successful from the group, that's the best way of putting it, I've always felt that there wasn't a single singer in The Wanted that I found unique, different, or special at all, or really that remarkable. They all came across as mediocre singers who weren't good enough, so they put them together rather than being good enough to shine as part of an ensemble. Basically your modern boy band, your modern post-2000s boy band. And I'm sorry fans of The Wanted, but this is an overproduced, pandering, irritating track that was just a mess, and it's no good in my books, and that's why it's on this list. And I wanted to give The Wanted a free pass, but they are the reminder of the horrors we went through in the music industry during that 2010 to 2013 period. Hopefully that never turns back around. Moving on to my second pick for this list in this part anyway, we have Flo Rida's track, my boy Flo Rida, his track Whistle. At this point you could probably put the entire Flo Rida discography on this list and I probably wouldn't even care or bat an eye, but this song has to take the cake for me. Yeah, this song was difficult. These really awkward and forced sexual innuendos are never the way to go if you want to make a permanent lasting music piece, but who am I kidding? This is Flo Rida, and this boy needs some head, so he's going to talk about it in the least subtle way possible. You have your usual overcompressed beat and noise gated to heck instrumentation. You have that slightly auto-tuned, slightly singing sort of rap vocals by Flo Rida where he's not actually rapping, it's more like semi-singing. A repeating chorus that just never seems to end, it just goes over and over again. It's like sampled at this point. And the most annoying whistle pro-chorus breakdown that you have to hear like 19 times throughout its runtime. I mean, this makes the Chainsmokers chorus breakdowns actually seem pretty tame nowadays. It must have been gross as a parent hearing all these young children singing about how they want someone to blow their whistle, baby. Yeah, and trust me, on my bus home from school, there were at least 6 or 7 occasions where you heard these choirs of kids singing about how you can blow my whistle. Yeah, it's good stuff. Just a really low and cringe-inducing track that I would like to forget, and unfortunately I don't ever see me doing so still gives me like scary flashbacks to this day. Every time I hear a dog whistle, Moving on to my next entry in this list, we have Naughty Boy featuring Sam Smith, and it's their track La La La, a bit of a surprising one, perhaps even controversial to an extent. Now, I actually found out about Sam Smith way before he was even signed. On this little music forum I was a part of, and I saw a video of him singing. I thought it was fantastic, and I was proven right by the general population of just about every country in the world. Then he was basically released this track with Disclosure, I'm sure you've all heard it, and it became basically a star overnight. I think he has an incredible voice, and when I heard he was teaming up with Naughty Boy, I thought it would be the perfect collaboration because, again, I think coming off that Disclosure track, he had a lot of hype about him. Naughty Boy had just released a track with Emily Sandé. He had a lot of hype about him, so I thought, yeah, this sounds about right to me. I've always preferred Sam on house tracks as well, as his standalone music is a little dry, is a little boring, is a little predictable, and a bit Adele-esque, if you know what I mean. So I thought this track would be right up my alley, and when it came out, I enjoyed it. I didn't think it was amazing, but it was fun. It had a fun beat behind it and a great vocal performance, and it was more than listenable. But then it started circulating around the radio stations and internets, and then schools and hospitals, shopping centres, leisure centres, theme parks, all this sort of stuff. And then the song basically became inescapable, and I don't mind that so much because that typically happens with a pop chart song. It gets oversaturated. We're used to that now with just about every song. But this thing had longevity to it. 2 years later, and well into my teenagehood at this point, this track was still everywhere and constantly on repeat no matter where you go, and now I hate it for this one reason, and I thought you probably already guessed it at this point, and it's that little La 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 sample, that little kid's La La La. My goodness, on the first listen I thought it was a little bit annoying at that time, but on my 5,000th or 3 millionth listen, I felt it was actually the government brainwashing us with like an auditory drone. It literally became like a mosquito alarm, let's say that, because when it was basically played, I was forced to leave due to it actually having this blistering high pitch. So gosh, it even gives me shivers right now. Our next entry onto this list is the first entry of a cover into this entire series, and it's by Westlife, so you've probably already guessed it, and it's Uptown Girl. So Westlife have always been utter dog doo-doo. Let's cut the rubbish, let's cut the crap, let's cut the nostalgia. They've always been rubbish. The reason their music doesn't hold up to today is because they were rubbish, of course. And each one of their tracks is either cheesy, terrible, cliche, really badly written. Just tick any of the above. And yeah, I said it, I can't stand this brand of mum pop. And when you pair that with Louis Walsh and these sort of hand-picked Irish lads who don't really have that great voices, it made for a good recipe for vomit. Also, how do you make this outfit even more detestable when it already has Louis Walsh involved and they're signed to Simon Cowell as well? You know, how do you make them even more hated to this point? Well, you just butcher a Billy Joel classic. I mean, who's Billy Joel anyway? It's not like anybody's ever heard of him. So even though I've never really personally been the biggest fan of Billy Joel, I've always had the utmost respect for the guy and totally understand why so many people do, and his bigger tracks like Piano Man and Uptown Girl are like a sort of little time capsules back to when music was just fun, catchy music rather than bringing in all these serious undertones and plots we have today. However, Westlife took this track and did nothing with it. They basically added their trademark of terrible individual vocal performances and just changed nothing about it at all. They didn't even try to make it their own. They just re-recorded it with programmed elements and a couple poor singers. It's basically everything wrong with that sort of 2000s, early 2000s anyway, British chart music scene. I don't really have too much more to say about this one other than it just being a terrible cover that not even 3-year-old me liked. So the last entry into this list, and I've had to take this about 5 times because it keeps hitting me hard, and it's a controversial pick. It's Eminem's track Not Afraid. I am a big fan of Eminem, that goes without saying, and I've never really found that he has a definitive stage which is any better than the other stages in his career. I thought his early work is great. I thought his last few tracks have been great, and I think regardless of what anyone says, he will be remembered as one, if not the best rapper of all time, or one of the most popular rappers of all time at the very least. However, there is a stage I do remember finding really odd and different when it comes to the Eminem discography. He went through this pop rap stage which was commercially absolutely unstoppable, and each one of those poppier tracks was basically a year defining track. It was always in the hundreds of millions views wise, and that was during a period where that never really happened. This was before, you know, Gangnam Style and all those sort of tracks really popped into the mainstream. Then you had his collaborations with Rihanna, tracks like Spacebound as well, and then you have Not Afraid. For its time, it wasn't that bad. It just reminds me of, say, like a Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 stage or video where they used it as a poignant montage song for those 360 no-scopes. Great song decision there. However, I found it a little uninteresting, overhyped, and not one of his best songs. It didn't really plague my childhood per se, but rather, looking back at this track now, it's immensely corny and it's undeserved of its 980 million views. I think it's at this point. This empowering, not afraid of nothing sort of theme seems like 30 years old, but this track's only 7 years old. It's not even a decade old yet, and it still feels like it's had a bad aging process. It's probably up there in my top 5 least favorite Eminem tracks, and its corniness and obvious commercialism actually turn me off of Eminem to this day. God, you can tell I need a glass of water at this point. I can still compliment his music and say his tracks are great, like I've already said, but I've never actively followed him since the day he dropped this track, and I think that's for good reason. I think the reason why he appears on this list in this series with this track is because it turned me away from one of my favorite artists of that period, and I think that's always a big shame. So there we have it. I better just stop my babbling now because I'm beginning to get a sore throat, and you get the point. I'd love to hear what you say in the comment section down below. As always, I'd like to hear your thoughts on any of the tracks mentioned here, any tracks that so-and-so plagued your childhood. I'd love to hear what your suggestions are. If you like this video, then please leave a like, subscribe to see more, and I'll see you around next time. Bye-bye.